The year this story takes place is the year nearly everything happened to Caroline Wexler. It was the year she moved from the city to a backwards hick town to finish high school. It was the year an industrial fire wouldn't stop burning just outside of town. The year her dad first discovered an itch that much later became cancer and, later still, took all his hair and then his life. It was the year a serial killer wearing a white suit roamed the county, leaving pretty young kids dead in his wake. We see Caroline entering school. She goes through the metal detector and the police confiscate some metal gadgets from her. She wonders if we have ever entered a room where you just knew everyone hated you. And makes us multiply that by roughly 1,000,000 to get a sense of her high school experience. Caroline says that when she knows somebody hates her, instead of trying to change their minds, she just gets defensive and weird and becomes the exact girl they think she is. A guy named Paul approaches Caroline to ask if she wants to join him and his friends to smoke some weed. Caroline accepts the invitation and gets high with the group. The other guys' names are Charles, Craig and Thurston. Later we see Caroline attending class. Barry Anderson, their teacher, asks them to write an essay on the historical or religious figure they most admire. Caroline thinks that after her mom died and they started moving all the time, it was like she and her dad had a lot of love to give, but no one to give it to. Caroline is riding her bike when she bumps into Thurston. He asks Caroline if she remembers meeting him at a party a while ago. Caroline sure does. Thurston believed to be the unluckiest person alive. Caroline goes to Barry's house, or as she prefers to call him, Mr. A. is not sure about letting a student in but gives in anyway. Caroline flirts with the teacher and then leaves. The next day, Mr. A announces that the essays they turned in were horrible, so now he's offering private tutorials after class to anyone who's interested. Of course, Caroline accepts the invitation to stay and they have a hot makeout session. Caroline promises she won't tell anyone about this. And before she can go further in the story, she decides to tell us about the story of Thurston and Rowley. The two guys leave a party together and crash the car. Rowley tells Thurston that he has some drugs in his pocket, so he must hide them before the police come. Thurston grabs the drugs and runs away from the scene. But what Thurston didn't know was that some poor guy in the wrong place and time was doing everything he could to save Rowley's life. Later, the doctor said Rowley had been hemorrhaging internally and there was nothing anyone could have done. Ms. Budge announces to the class that another girl has gone missing, so now they're applying curfews. Craig gets a drug-induced seizure during class. Ms. Budge shares this with Mr. A. Caroline comes in demanding her tutorial session. Ms. Budge says that it won't be possible since Mr. A must help her with the track team. Caroline calls Ms. Budge a bitch and rides out to the old satellite dish, where she sat to think about life. Caroline visits Thurston at his house. She straight up says that he's cute and wants to go out with him. Caroline and Thurston have sex, although it is kind of a disappointment to Caroline. Some other day, Thurston brings cupcakes to Caroline, but her dad won't let him in, giving the excuse that she's studying. Caroline's dad was just doing what her daughter asked him to do. But when Enid, Thurston's mom, goes with some cupcakes, Caroline's dad lets her in. They have a good time together. After Caroline reads the teacher's manuscript, she tells Mr. that this Larry guy from the book is entertaining in a pseudo-creepy, self-pitying, lonely make kind of way. Caroline is also pissed about the fact that he described her as an ethereal beauty and tells Mr. that he doesn't know anything about her, and pretty much breaks up with him through a note. Caroline meets with Thurston and they have a romantic moment. The next day, Mr. asks Caroline if they can see each other later. She agrees to this. Caroline also adds that that afternoon they made the mistake of watching the news. Another girl was abducted. Meanwhile, the industrial fire was still raging, growing bigger every day. As the toxic breeze carried fumes our way, some people had taken to wearing masks. But Caroline knew the real purpose was to provide the illusion of defense. In the meantime, we see Mr. getting ready and cooking dinner for Caroline. And when he has everything ready for her, he starts to get worried about the fact that Caroline probably forgot about him. So Mr. calls Caroline, but she's too busy making out with Thurston. Mr. decides to do something he does when he's bored. Call people pretending to want to know their annual income, if they're happy, and how they imagine the end of the world would look like. The woman whose name is Haya follows along until she recognizes Barry's voice and acts with sincere concern. She says that everyone is worried about him, but she can't keep talking because the man who's with her makes her hang up the phone. The next day, Mr. B asks Thurston if he knows. Thurston is confused about what he's supposed to know, and Mr. A pretty much reveals to him that he's been having sex with Caroline. Mr. A also tells Thurston that Caroline never really liked him, it was all a cover-up. Thurston says nothing, he just leaves. When he arrives home, he kicks Caroline out of his house while she's helping with the Christmas decorations. Caroline explains that the thing with Mr. A is over because she dumped him for Thurston. Thurston doesn't care and calls her slut. Thurston is going mad, he grabs his lamp and crashes it against the wall. Enid thinks it's best Caroline goes. Before Caroline leaves, she asks Enid to tell Thurston she's sorry. Caroline feels bad and starts to cry. Thurston pulls out a bunch of chemicals to get high. Thurston and his friends are at Jenny's Christmas party. Craig doesn't want to take any drugs, but Paul insists and gives him some pills. Lily, Thurston's little sister, sneaks out. He then corrects himself, saying he won't do such a thing, but he might kill himself. Caroline leaves anyway and calls Thurston to apologize and says she will be going to the party and to not do anything stupid. Thurston gets approached by Jenny, who wants to show him her house. Thurston follows her to her room. Jenny then starts to kiss him, but Thurston says that it feels wrong. Jenny turns off the light and they keep making out. Meanwhile, Mr. A is standing in the shower with a gun pointing it out at his head. However, he doesn't have the guts to pull the trigger and kill himself. Instead, he pulls the trigger and accidentally shoots himself in the leg. Mr. A calls Caroline to tell her that he accidentally shot his leg. Caroline pretends that she can't hear him and hangs up the phone. Suddenly Caroline sees a blinding light that makes her crash the car. Caroline manages to get out of the car. She sees a man who's badly injured. He keeps repeating that it wasn't his fault. Caroline says that she knows this because the road's bad, but the man explains that what he means is that he was raised to hate. Some guy interrupts Thurston's and Jenny's interaction to announce that they just caught the killer. Ms. Badge knocks on MA's door to let him know the news about the killer. Mr. A tells her about his shot leg and invites her for dinner. But Ms. Badge says that she needs to take him to the hospital. Mr. A feels better when Ms. Badge agrees to have dinner with him later. Enid then finds that her daughter sneaked out to be with a friend. And Caroline apologizes to Thurston and they fix the things between them.